Hey y'all, welcome to our Cottonwood Canyon, Telegraph Canyon, Picket Post Mountain ride. Today's video is mainly meant to be a trail guide for anyone planning on heading out to this area, but it also has a couple of interesting stops as well as some amazing scenery in between the trail riding sequences. So hopefully there's something everyone can enjoy. We've got the truck and trailer all loaded, so let's start heading east. The trailhead we're heading to today is about 85 miles away. Ideally, we would have left a little earlier, but we didn't feel like fighting crosstown rush hour traffic. We would be taking US 60 east out of town, then heading south on Arizona 79 before turning off on Cottonwood Canyon Road. It was a little more overcast and hazy as we were passing through downtown than what we're accustomed to here in the desert. Traffic was still a little congested, but the HOV lane helped us move through more easily. So it really only added a few minutes to our commute. Cottonwood Canyon Road was in much nicer condition than I expected and was very easy even pulling a trailer. I suspect that this road is frequently maintained since it acts as a service road for an active materials pit. There are lots of campsites lining both sides of the road, and we had no problem finding an open spot. The land in this area is either state trust or Bureau of Land Management, depending on exactly where you decide to pull off. Our chosen route today would end up being about 34 miles out and back, and I would rate it between a 4 or a 5 out of 10 on the difficulty scale. I'll start the riding portion of the video by showing what I would consider the most challenging portion of the ride. There are a few other washouts and narrow shelf roads that might pose a challenge, especially if you're in a wider vehicle, but I think the boulders in Telegraph Canyon are the biggest issue. There was nothing that we couldn't clear, and we never bottomed out. It did help that we're only 62 inches wide, so we could go around instead of over some of the larger boulders.
Okay, you ready? Any idea where we're going?
No. That's why I looked at you.
The audio should be pretty good today.
It's gonna be like that's what you thought.
We headed back to Cottonwood Canyon Road from the staging area. The first part of this road is fast and fun in the side-by-side, but if you want to skip it, you could just stage further up the road. There's a little over 3 miles to cover from where we started before the road splits, and it starts to look a little more like an off-road trail.
So far we've been able to get away without the four-wheel drive.
I mean, so far,
Yeah.
I think we'll be good.
Now we're
It's not
entering.
maintained for low clearance vehicles.
Yeah.
We got new tires. We should be good.
Got new tires. Alright, let's go try them out.
Good.
After crossing the cattle guard and seeing the sign indicating that the road was not maintained for low clearance vehicles, the trail started to resemble a trail more than a road. However, it was still pretty easy going, and wouldn't even pose a problem for those low clearance vehicles the sign warned about. Proceeding from here, there are a couple of trail junctions that you will have to navigate, so having an idea of your route will become important. There is a downloadable GPX file available for this route, and I'll put a link in the description. We stayed left where the road splits to the materials pit, and stayed right later following the sign to Cottonwood. The trail dropped down into a small wash for a little bit, but it was still wide enough and easy going that I think any vehicle could pass without issue. We were still moving fairly quickly at this point and still hadn't needed to use the four-wheel drive. Climbing up out of the wash, we made our first stop of the day to check out this rusted old tanker being used for livestock water. Even though it was in pretty rough shape, they would appreciate it if you could steer clear of adding any bullet holes.
Are you scared?
I'm a little scared.
I know. I'm having fun.
I'm fired up and ready to go. Hopefully you can't get lost.
I hope not, but there is a big ledge over on the other side of the hill you haven't seen yet.
All right, let's go check it out.
All right.
I was able to get the drone up for just a minute to capture some of this area, but this would be the last time for today. It was pretty windy and I was getting wind warnings the whole time I was in the air, so I packed it up and put it away. After taking a moment to look around, we thought this might be a good time to switch drivers. The road had been pretty easy so far, which is what she prefers, but she did end up having to navigate a couple of trickier sections as we progressed. We did go ahead and switch into four-wheel drive at this point, just in case we got to a spot where a little extra traction might be helpful. Once past the cattle pen and the tanker truck, the trail does start to get a little more interesting and scenic. There are some rockier sections and some shelf road sections. Also, a few moderately steep climbs and descents with a little bit of off-camber. There is still nothing extreme by any measure, but the pace is a little slower and requiring a little more attention to choosing the proper line to avoid some minor obstacles. Of course, just assume that everything is twice as steep as the camera makes it look, because video never does it justice. The trail has still been plenty wide for driving through here in a Jeep without having to worry about pinstriping the sides of the doors and fenders. As we continue to climb, the scenery continues to improve. We're now getting to the part of the trail that might not be great for anyone who's uncomfortable with shelf roads. Again, this is nothing extreme like the Alpine Loop in Colorado, but a narrow 2-track with a 100-foot drop-off might become pretty stressful if you encounter any oncoming traffic.
Hey,
Woo! Yeah.
how was that?
That was awesome. You're a good teacher.
Well,
No,
unfortunately,
I noticed you weren't in the vehicle though when I did it.
unfortunately, I can't spot and do the camera at the same time because I missed a good portion of it.
I made it down.
So-
I didn't tip over.
Yeah, we'll just have to take your word for it that you made it down that big ugly spot right there.
A common theme on this ride would be livestock. We ran across quite a few groups of cattle both coming and going. They appeared to be pretty accustomed to visitors because they didn't really pay us any attention at all. We were a couple hours into the ride at this point because we were moving slowly and taking our time to enjoy the sights. The timing was good, and we were approaching a little valley which might provide some shelter from the wind, so we decided now was a good time to break for lunch. And this was the section of the trail where we'd run into a few groups of jeepers. They weren't having any difficulty with the trail either, but they were moving a lot slower than we were.
This little valley to have lunch in. Nice concrete pad to set up our chairs on. That's a luxury. I thought it might be wind down here since we are pretty much completely surrounded by mountains down in a nice valley, but guess what? No, plenty windy down here too. Hard to read. It looks like it actually might be a little easier to read on the camera than it is to the naked eye, but Pledge Medals 1949. Yep. That's a great little spot. And we've got this nice water tank out here too. Seen a lot of cattle on this trail. Not sure if this was for the cattle or part of the mining operation. Obviously, like most everything, full of bullet holes. Why not? Yep.
After talking with our new friends in the Polaris for a minute, we ended up backtracking a little to see a crested saguaro that we had missed. I had it set as a point of interest on my map, but was paying more attention to driving than I was to the GPS. We got out for a quick look and a couple pictures, and then we were back on our way towards Telegraph Canyon. You may have noticed that I've taken over the driving duties again at this point. The trail is becoming a little more technical, and Carrie really prefers the fast fun sections. In the distance ahead, we're approaching the Ajax mine. Historical documents about this mine indicate that, quote, "The wagon roads to these points are good on the desert and are fair only where they enter the mountains. The present hauling distance of 16 miles can be reduced to 10 by building of a 2-mile stretch over a low pass between two canyons. This will cost $1,200. The Ajax mine was primarily a source for lead, silver, and zinc. It is located in the Mineral Mountain Mining District, and it appears that the documentation of this property begins around the 1940s, although it was said to have first produced in 1915. However, after reading the documentation that I found, it appears that the mill was not built until the 1960s. This makes sense because the appearance of the structure does look more modern than many that we've discovered. The mill consisted of an 18 by 24-inch dynamic crushing machine, and power was supplied by a 115 kilowatt diesel generator.
This one looks to be, I don't know, a little more on the modern side of the mines we found. I just missed Carrie climbing up the hill. You what? Got a pretty big hopper up there for dumping the raw materials. Again, looks like we've been having some pretty heavy target practice. Not sure we can blame the collapse for that. Just look like big K-rails that you might see on the side of the road. I guess stopped being an active operation long enough ago so that a cactus has grown out of it, and has been for a pretty good amount of time. Big hopper from the top. Find my phone yet? Not cool.
No, don't lose mine.
Well, I might just take yours. See, instead of getting in our 4-mile hike, we got in our like
4/10 of a mile.
350 feet. But it is over challenging and uneven terrain. Continuing on the trail past the mine, we were heading towards Picket Post Mountain and the hike we intended to do that afternoon. One of the stops between the mine and the hike was a spectacular overlook. Yep, so how about this view? On this little pull-off. Nice high point, looking right across. See the four peaks out in the distance. Weaver's Needle. Superstition Mountains out there. Great. See out in the distance, there's the road we came in on. Just past the overlook, we encountered the only gate that we would see today. I jumped out and made quick work of it while taking care not to be tripped up by the somewhat different concrete cattle guard. Moving further into Telegraph Canyon, we were beginning to see some of the damage caused by the Telegraph fire that burned in this area last year. The different color palette of the landscape is pretty, even though it is the result of such a tragic event, and the vegetation is showing signs of a speedy recovery. This wildfire started on June 4th and burned 180,757 acres before being fully contained on July 3rd. Here we are crawling through what I think was the most technically challenging part of this ride. This wash bottom had quite a few large boulders to carefully navigate. The advantage of our narrow wheelbase allowed us to squeeze through some of the tighter areas. Otherwise, climbing over the boulders would have been a much rougher ride with the possibility of bottoming out a few times. After about 3.5 hours into our ride, we were getting this stunning view of the south side of Picket Post Mountain. It's almost like driving into an Arizona postcard. Alright, so behind me is the trailhead we were hoping to hike today. And the trail goes up into these mountains here. That's where I believe the Perlite Caves are. Unfortunately, this is also the location where we realized I've lost my phone. So instead of going on our hike today, we're going to backtrack slowly and hope that maybe I can find my phone. So, wish us luck. So, we headed back the way we came, keeping our eyes on the road and checking everywhere that we stopped in hopes of rescuing my misplaced phone. Unfortunately, it was not to be, no matter how hard we looked. Oh well, just a reminder to make sure any valuables are really secured before you go off bouncing around the desert. Passing through once again, we met up with the friendly desert cows that inhabit these mountains. The return trip only took us about an hour and a half without stops for sightseeing and lunch. That means we probably averaged about 10 miles per hour on the return, which is pretty respectable for an off-road route. The next minute and a half or so is just the rest of the driving footage on the way back to our staging area. If you want to skip to dinner discussion and the wrap-up, Fast forward to 27 minutes and 10 seconds. And we went ahead and set up our mini camp over here. I have quesadillas again. Those are a camp favorite. Will help us stall and kill enough time so that we don't have to drive back through downtown Phoenix in rush hour.
I hope not.
Plus we can kill some time by stopping at the T-Mobile store. That'll help us
Oh,
out.
Mikey, I'm so sorry.
Oh well,
Oh, it's the worst. I can't believe you lost it.
that's what you get.
Oh, man.
But I'll put some good food in my belly.
Mm-hmm. You'll feel a little better.
Maybe have a nice cold beer.
Yes.
And maybe it'll all be better.
Poor guy.
Of course, you know, it's not like our whole life is on our phones or anything.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll have to keep you updated as to how that goes. But for now, we're signing off. I'm going to have some dinner.
Yay.
And
Other than the phone, it's been a great day.
oh yeah, this is a beautiful area. Highly recommend it. Mountains all around. Probably gonna get some nice sunset views here. Got the superstitions way off to the south of us. Kind of hard to see out there. But we'll definitely be back. Wish it wasn't quite so far of a drive, but hey, we're thankful that we've got it as close as we do. So we're going to sign off for this time, and we'll see you next time.